So the next item on the agenda, which I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited to see, it is our keynote speaker, Dr. Yoni Freedhoff. And I'm just going to give him a little introduction, and then we'll welcome him on the stage. So, Dr. Yoni Freedhoff is an assistant professor of family medicine at the University of Ottawa and the medical director of Ottawa's Bariatric Medical Institute. Widely regarded as Canada's most outspoken expert in obesity, Dr. Freedhoff's advocacy work has seen him testifying in front of both the House of Commons and the Senate, as a subject in the acclaimed Canadian documentary Sugar Coated, and as something of a fixture in both national and international media regarding nutrition, public policy, and obesity. Dr. Freedhoff's award-winning blog, Weighty Matters, has received over 17 million visits, and his book, The Diet Fix: Why Diets Fail and How to Make Yours Work, is a #1 national Canadian bestseller. Today, Yanni's keynote address is titled, "It Takes a Village, Not a Child: Why We're Not Going to Treat Our Way Out of Our Mess of Childhood Obesity and What We Can Do About It." Please join me in welcoming Dr. Yoni Freedhoff.
Checking. There we go. Thank you very much, and thanks to the Heart and Stroke Foundation, the sponsors, for inviting me. Hopefully they won't regret it when I'm done. Today I'm going to talk about why treatment is not going to be the solution. And I don't know that there's many people in the room who believe that treatment is going to be the key to our success. But I want to spend some time with what I would describe as a shock and awful presentation in terms of proving this point, that treatment by itself is unlikely to be sufficient, but I promise to end on a slightly positive note. And so first off, I have no commercial support for this particular program. Nobody's given me from a commercial entity any money to present anything to you today. And as far as presenter disclosures, I do receive a fair bit of honoraria for speaking, but the two commercial interests that I have is I'm the co-owner of my medical office, and there is a book that is theoretically purchasable. So, with that out of the way, I want to start with a common analogy that, as far as I know, was started by Dr. David Katz, and that is the flood analogy, where what we are seeing right now is a flood of childhood obesity. It's a flood of chronic disease and diet-related diseases. And I think that for many people, the instinctual response to this flood, as far as where did it come from, where should we lay blame, is somewhere in this area, this sort of a flood of fast food, a flood of ultra-processed foods, a flood of marketing to kids, where we see Shrek shilling Happy Meals, and where we see Beyonce for $50 million while she was actually a member of Michelle Obama's Let's Move campaign to combat childhood obesity, lending her image to the cans of PepsiCo. And so really, I think, again, this instinct, this sort of approach boils down to a somewhat hypocritical one, you know, that we are laying blame. We're laying blame away from our own doorsteps. We're laying blame to the food industry. We're suggesting that there is this sort of evil force that is out there to trick and dupe and get our kids and ourselves eating unhealthy foods and choices. And while it's true that the food industry's job is to sell food, quite honestly, I think that we as a society, not you folks specifically in this room, I'm sure many of who are fighting the good fight, but we as a society have somehow let ourselves get to this place. And so for much of the rest of this discussion, I'm going to be showing you some examples of what I mean by that. And I want you, while we're going through them, to ponder the question of how did we get to this place? And so we've gotten to a place where we're treating cancer or raising money for cancer by having cake sales for cancer, silent auction for the showstopper cake. And, you know, these sales are very well intentioned. I want to point out that I'm not disparaging any of the individuals involved in these sorts of programs. This has become normal. You know, this is entrenched as normal in our society. And so when there's a normal behavior, junk food fundraising in this particular example, and in many to follow, why would anybody think twice about doing it? Here's Heart Month cupcakes, that I'm sure the Heart and Stroke Foundation might have some issue with, but yet these are being sold quite regularly all over the place because, again, people buy junk food, so they use it to fundraise. Here's for the Breast Cancer Foundation of Quebec, the sale of all sorts of chocolate bars because, again, people do buy chocolate bars. And the question of raising money to fund research or public health programs where the sale of the items themselves is anathema perhaps to the organization's ends and means and aims is problematic. Here's Calgary Health Trust Smile Cookie campaign. This isn't just unique to Calgary. Smile cookies are everywhere. It's when Tim Hortons gets incredible advertising and sales of their cookies. These campaigns are now very tightly linked, understandably, with social media because what happens is you post your Smile cookies with your hashtags and people then ascribe good feelings and intentions to Tim Hortons, and perhaps there's more sales as a consequence. Here's Cookies for Kids. So it works in the States too, at the Mary Bridge Children's Hospital clinics, partnered with Chick-fil-A. We've got the Miracle Treat Day, which is now a North American phenomena. It started in Canada, and it has extended to North America, but we are helping local kids by encouraging the purchase and sale of blizzards. It's a questionable thing in my mind. Here's Krispy Kreme donuts for the Children's Wish Foundation. Here's some chocolate bars for BC kids where you can raise the bar and all the proceeds will go to the BC Children's Hospital to buy $5 large chocolate bars. Slices for Smiles is one I've written a fair bit about. I don't know if it's out here on the East Coast. Do you guys have Slices for Smiles? So Slices for Smiles has been going on now for I think it's a decade in Ontario for sure. And what it is it's the sale of pizza, fast food pizza, where it's led by the Miracle Children's Network, which is an organization that gives the raised monies to children's hospitals. And they announced one day, which most of these events don't announce how much money they raise, but this one did announce how much money it was raising. This is a number of years ago, and they had announced proudly that they had raised $1 million over 7 years for all of the various hospitals involved. And so there's 12 various hospitals involved in 7 years, and much as I went into medicine because in part I'm not great at math, I was able to do the division. I even was able to divide by the 365 days a year, and it worked out to be in the neighborhood of $40 per hospital per day for the use of a 1-month-long initiative to sell fast food pizza. For CHEO, which is the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, it's where my neck of the woods, it paid for 2 seconds of their operating expenditures every single day. And I do wonder whether it's worth it, and I've had chats with the CEO of the hospital at CHEO and suggested that maybe, you know, if you're gonna do something, you should go big rather than so small. And if you're gonna take money from the food industry, take a lot of money from the food industry, not $35 a day. And I'm gonna suggest this here. I've suggested this to him as well, but I think that there is a role for some hospital someday to launch what I would describe as the Golden Sunday campaign, where the purpose of the campaign would be to raise sufficient funds that it could replace, on an endowed basis, all of the funds currently being raised through the sale of fast food. It's gonna happen. It's not a matter of if, but when hospitals stop junk food fundraising, but it will come. Here's the Boys and Girls Club recommending that you can get 3 free kids meals if you donate $3 at any Montana barbecue and bar location. Here's the Boys and Girls Club again, suggesting something similar for Swiss Chalet. Certainly restaurant meals are a problem when it comes to childhood obesity. We know that the dollars being spent outside our homes have gone up very dramatically since the 60s and the 70s. And studies done on the caloric content of fast food meals suggest that 97% or so of children's meals contain more calories than they ought to be consuming in a particular meal. And that's not to mention the nutrition that may or may not be included in those meals. So when I see charities who purport to be involved in teaching health and promoting health and well-being in kids, encouraging and permitting and subsidizing restaurant meals, I find that problematic. Here's Chipotle and the Canadian Cancer Society partnering up so that you can fundraise by having a giant burrito. Here's the Multiple Sclerosis Society of Canada suggesting that the best way to fundraise for them, or a way to fundraise for them, is through fast food burgers. Or an extra, extra large poutine. This was a campaign of theirs from a couple of years ago where it was right after the ice bucket challenge, and so this was the XXL poutine pledge, where if you pledge to eat an XXL poutine, I'll read it, it's by pledging to eat poutine you can help end multiple sclerosis. You know, I try to imagine being in the room when this was discussed with the folks. But it's so normal that unless you see it in a venue like this, where, you know, somebody like me is beating people over the head with image after image after image, you may not think about it because, you know, the instinct is to think, well, but it's just one. You know, and I hear that argument all the time, but it's just one. But it's just one all the time. I mean, there's just one almost every day, if not every day, for our kids and for ourselves. Here's Denny's, the ultimate deep-fried cheesecake, not ironically to support the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. And the JDRF actually they are very comfortable with junk food fundraising. Very, very comfortable. I've got more examples coming up. But it's interesting, too, when people criticize the JDRF for junk food fundraising, one of their defenses is, well, no, this is type 1 diabetes, not type 2 diabetes. And it's a head scratcher that this is the way it's being promoted. Here you can make a difference one cheesecake at a time to inform, demonstrate healthy eating habits and nutrition in school-aged children. Here you've got London Health Sciences Centre. You eat, we give at Chuck's Roadhouse for, I guess, a wingding of some sort. And here's the wing fling for the YMCA Northumberland. We've got the Health Sciences North Foundation suggesting that you can eat cupcakes without guilt because these cupcakes will help to support cardiac care programs at Health Sciences North. We've got the Slurpee Name Your Price Day, which will fund food banks of Canada. And in the Slurpee Name Your Price Day, you can pay whatever you want for your Slurpee. And I believe that they've also attached their bring whatever cup size you want to a charitable promotion as well, which they host 1 or 2 times a year. This was Buckets for the Cure. It's not a joke. This isn't The Onion. This was Komen for the Cure, a breast cancer foundation who partnered with KFC to sell pink buckets of fried chicken in the name of raising money for breast cancer research. Here's the JDRF again selling chocolate bars. Here's the Canadian Cancer Society. Does your New Year's resolution call for fresh veggies? Domino's Pizza Canada can do that. And I remember I left a comment under this Facebook post of theirs. And they were, again, very strongly supportive and not at all seeing this as problematic when it was pointed out. I think it, again, speaks to the fact that when you question normal, people sometimes get mad at you. Here's Dough for School. So this is Boston Pizza. So there's lots of these fundraising programs for school because when you see junk food fundraising on a national level, it's not surprising that there's going to be a trickle down, right? The trickle down is to our schools and our communities. We see Domino's having a dough-raising night for pizza. We've got McTeacher's Night. I'm not sure if those are out here. They probably are, McTeacher's Nights. You just might not be aware of them. On McTeacher's Night, the school principals and teachers staff a McDonald's, and then the McDonald's provides some money from the sales of the food that night to the school whose principal and teachers are staffing it. A study done on McTeacher's Night found that on average, they raised $1.18 a student. You know, but they raised a lot more, I think, for McDonald's, both in terms of the direct sales that day and also in the context of brand washing and just the feel-goodness, which in turn might help prevent pushes and efforts to minimize their involvement in the community. Here's a picture of the McTeacher's Night. In that same study looking at McTeacher's Night, there was one school that managed to make 2 cents a kid. You know, these are not lucrative ways to make money for schools for the most part. Now, I was saying there's a trickle down, right? So the trickle down goes to stuff like this: parent council hot lunch, hot dogs, and bakery desserts. I mean, I'm not sure this is how we should be raising money for our schools. But it's constant, right? So here's Hot Dog and Ice Cream Day from the Grade 7 French Immersion School, where they're going to use it as a fundraiser for their trip to Quebec. And I see this in my own, schools. My oldest daughter is fundraising with her class to try to go to Toronto, or to help subsidize their trip to Toronto. Just this past weekend, she set up a used book sale in a park, and we encouraged the class to do the same, $1 a book. Every family's got a gajillion books lying around from when the kids were really young. And not only was there not tremendous pickup with the idea, and $1 a book for something that, it's an easy sell, there were other kids who came and showed up, and they weren't trying to do anything wrong, but they sold lemonade and cupcakes because that's what people sell when we do fundraising, because that's what they see, that's what they learn. Here's the Smarter Hot Dog Day. Hot Dog Days are here again with an exclamation mark. I suppose if I was writing about Hot Dog Days are here again, I'd also put an exclamation mark, but it would have a different implication than the one that perhaps is the one that's here. It includes apple slices and a Sweets from the Earth cookie. Do you know what a Sweets from the Earth cookie is? So it's a cookie that has been tweaked so that the formulation is just such that it can come into the school food sort of requirements as being a food that is allowed to be sold. And, the junk food fundraising, it even extends to the rewards for junk food fundraising. So here's the charity drive where whoever raises the most money gets a pizza party, second place gets hot chocolate, and the third place gets a cookie party. An extra period of recess might have gone well, commandeering the school PA system. I mean, it's not difficult to come up with ideas that don't involve junk food, unless the only idea you're ever presented with is junk food, in which case it's hard to think of others. And we see this everywhere. So this is my local arena. And this is just one bank of vending machines at our local arena. I think the last time I went and counted, there was 18 different vending machines at the arena. This is an arena that's funded by the municipality. This is the city of Ottawa. The canteen is not much better, but yet here we have the city selling just junk food to kids, and they don't have to. But again, this is normal. And I'd love to know how much money is raised by these sorts of vending machines. Maybe it's very substantial, but that would be an important thing to know as well. But we never hear about how much is raised unless we ask. I gave a similar talk to this once, actually, at one of my kids' schools at the request of the principal. And before I went in, I noticed that just outside the gym was a solitary vending machine. And it was selling the usual pretend junk food that is promoted as healthy. The baked chips, the granola bars, the perhaps slightly less awful junk food, right? But maybe it's not less awful given that the school is promoting these as healthy options. And so I think when you promote, less awful food as good for you food, that might make that food more awful. Nobody confuses Coca-Cola with healthy. Nobody confuses potato chips with healthy, but suddenly granola bars and baked chips might be confused as, certainly not so bad for you when you can see them being sold in the schools. So I asked him if he had a record of how much money that vending machine makes on an annual basis for the school. And he said, actually, I can figure that out. And so we went into his office before the talk. It was $700 a year. And so he had it removed, which was a lovely win. But if we don't ask questions, we don't get answers. And I think knowing how much these vending machines make and how much just go back to the vending machine companies would be important things for us to know as community advocates for public health. This little guy is a friend's son. He's holding a snow cone that was handed to him after he ran 100 meters at a local fun run in the community. And this idea that we have to feed kids when they move is a really problematic idea that, again, is perpetuated by well-intentioned people. My blog post today is about my middle daughter, who's now 11. And the other day she said to me, she was saying, I'm really excited about track and field day. And we actually have been getting her into running, and she just finished her second 10K, and she did a race in the class, and she came in third, and she was really, excited. So I was excited because I thought, hey, she's getting into this. She wants to be a runner. And so I said, what are you most excited about? And she said, I'm going to try Gatorade. And I'm like, what? And she's like, well, I've never tried Gatorade, and I really want to try Gatorade. And I said, oh, do they give out Gatorade? She said, well, they sell it to the kids. And last year they had a whole bunch of different sport drinks, but Gatorade was one of them, and I'm going to try that this year. And I'm not going to say no. I mean, we're not monsters. And the only reason she hasn't tried Gatorade, I think, is because there's way better candy than Gatorade out there. I mean, Gatorade is a particularly not good tasting candy. I mean, it is liquid candy. My kids have tried soft drinks. They taste better than Gatorade, that's for sure. But the calories and sugar are pretty comparable drop per drop. So the reason she hasn't tried it is because it's just not good enough. It's not worth it, right? And so, this message that the kids are getting, though, and so this is a track and field day. So I asked her about all the events, and we added up the meters that if you entered every single event, you would have run 3 kilometers, and you would have done a long jump, and you would have done a shot put. That's the entirety of the activity of the day. There is not going to be a single kid there who would benefit or require a sport drink, but the school, whether intentionally or not, is teaching kids that exercise either requires or deserves sport drinks. I mean, here's a great opportunity actually for the school to teach kids that sport drinks are just liquid candy. I mean, they could have water and a big messaging sign about why sport drinks are not pretty much ever required for virtually 99.95% of the population. But no, instead they're using it as an opportunity actually to make money because they're selling these sport drinks to the kids. They're also selling them Freezies, chips, and popcorn. These are 11-year-olds. This package of junk food, which totals 480 calories if you add it all up, was given to the completers of the Kids of Steel triathlon series. A Kid of Steel swims for 25 meters, runs for 200 meters, and cycles 1 kilometer. That is a Kid of Steel. It's for, I think, 3 to 5-year-olds. And the goal, of course, for the marketers who are providing the people with these free foods is to create customers and, again, to create this idea that you need to refuel constantly when you exercise. Run, Jump, Throw is from Athletics Canada. Athletics Canada are the people responsible for our Olympians, right? So these are people who, again, care about sport. They recently partnered with the Hershey's Company. And the partnership is for a program called Run, Jump, Throw, which is for little kids. I want you to look at the logo. So the logo, oops, I thought I had a laser, but that's okay. The logo is it really is Hershey's Kisses. They changed the logo when they made the partnership so that the logo now would be Hershey's Kisses. And that's probably an appropriate logo given what is likely to occur at the events, at least some of them, because Hershey's and Athletics Canada have had partnerships for some time now. One of their other partnerships is for older kids, and it's for track and field games. And so there's some photos online of what happens at the meet at the end of the season of the track and field games. Here's the Athletics Canada logo, and we see the Hershey's Canada logo, and then we see this happening at those events. I mean, this is a marketing opportunity for Hershey's. It's golden, and I realize Athletics Canada gets money and support, but the question we have to ask as a society is whether or not it's worth it. You know, is it worth taking money from the food industry? And we asked this question about tobacco as well. When I went to medical school in the 90s in Toronto, I had this apartment with a great view of downtown Toronto. And we had, at the time, the Benson and Hedges, the cigarette manufacturer, the Benson and Hedges Symphony of Fire. And it's this, you know, it's this really dramatic and multi-country competition for fireworks, and it was spectacular, and you could listen to the music on the radio because all of the different events were timed to music while watching from my balcony. It was great, and it was just around that time where people started being much more vocal about whether or not we should be taking tobacco dollars to fund the arts, because tobacco was quite involved in funding the arts, because I suppose they wanted the tie-in with sophistication and smoking. I'm not sure. But I do remember people saying, oh no, we could never get rid of the tobacco sponsorship because then we won't have the arts anymore. We still have the arts. We do. Sport is something that the food industry ties itself to very tightly. It does so for two reasons. One is the fueling yourself idea, which I think is valuable to sport. And then, of course, the emotional branding. But the other is this notion that, you know, so long as you're active, you can eat all the crap you want. And that literally is the goal and message for many sport industries. Sarah Kirk, one of the speakers later, and I, we wrote a paper, I think it was 2011, about this, that this is a key message for the food industry. And, you know, we do let the food industry get involved with sport pretty much everywhere. The official snack of Canada Soccer now is Chips Ahoy cookies. Timbits owns, you know, youth sport in Canada. It's hard to find any youth sport that doesn't have a Timbits hockey team. And Timbits has a program now where if your kid plays on a Timbits team, you get a patch that you can sew onto your kid's jersey. And it's the I just played, I'm thirsty patch, and it's not just for soccer, it's for hockey too. And then if you show up after the game to a Tim Hortons wearing the jersey, your kid gets a free sugar-sweetened beverage, and it's Tim Hortons. They're gonna get some donuts as well. That would be what would happen if I ended up with my kids in Tim Hortons. So this is a marketing opportunity. This is not altruism. The American Heart Association, they partnered with the NFL to create NFL Play 60. And it's specifically targeting childhood obesity. That is the explicit message. I think the quote is it's designed to tackle childhood obesity because of the football. In any case, it's funded by dairy. And so what NFL Fuel Up to Play 60 is for dairy, well, it's to market chocolate milk. So chocolate milk is a sugar-sweetened beverage that has drop per drop, in some cases, double the calories of Coca-Cola with 20% more sugar. And you know, the events of NFL Play 60 often involve the provision of chocolate milk to kids who didn't play, but this health halo around chocolate milk and sport is a very powerful one that is really pervasive, and it's sad for me to see the American Heart Association partnering up in its provision. Nesquik, they wanted in on the action too, so they're not dairy, they're just literally chocolate syrup. So they partnered with the American Youth Soccer Organization and ponied up on this same message of chocolate milk being a miraculous fuel. And then, of course, the trickle down is just to our regular soccer fields. This was what one kid was provided with one day's meat playing soccer. I mean, if my kid bends a blade of grass, somebody's giving them something to eat on a regular basis. And they don't need it, right? They don't need it from a hydration perspective. Drink water when you're thirsty for healthy people works. There are certain rare medical conditions where that might not be true in the elderly and little kids. But for the most part, our thirst mechanisms work really, really well. And we don't need fuel if we're running around the field for an hour as a kid. It's just not necessary. What's also not necessary are schools awarding the top runner of the meet with an I'm loving it McDonald's coupon. This was, I don't think she wants to be named, but this was an obesity researcher in London, Ontario, whose son won the track and field meet and was given the coupon to go to McDonald's as a reward for his efforts. This is Team Canada with their contest to win a year-long supply of caramel bars. Here we've got the school lunch programs that have pizza, and you know, sometimes people will say, well, but Yoni, the pizza, it complies. So first of all, I think that a lot of our school food sort of rules and guidelines are weak. But even if it did comply, what this teaches kids is that fast food pizza once a week is a normal part of life. That message is not one that I think complies with healthy eating as a whole. We order fast food pizza in my house every time my father comes to visit, so probably about 6 times a year. It is normal, it's part of life, but weekly, and weekly with a trusted institution like a school teaching kids that that's okay, concerns me. And it does weird things. So this idea of pizza being healthy. So Pizza Nova, which is an Ontario pizza chain, now comes to kindergarten classes and grade 1 classes to teach kids about nutrition. So another colleague, Ian Patton from the Canadian Obesity Network, and his son is in one of these classes that had Pizza Nova come, and he came home to tell his dad, hey Dad, you know, pizza's the healthiest food because it has all 4 food groups in it. And you know what else he brought home was the certificate of completion that got him a free pizza. And last year, according to Pizza Nova, they were invited to 120 schools and entertained more than 27,000 kindergartners and grade 1 kids. And he questioned the teacher about it. He went to the teacher and said, well, what are you, like, why would you do this? And he said it nicely. He wasn't mean and he wasn't confrontational. And basically he was told, listen, the kids really like it, and it's a easy period for them and for me, and really it was just, well, they'll do it, so we're going to invite them in. You know, I'm quite certain, and there's going to be lots of public health dietitians in this room, had they called their local public health unit and asked if there was a dietitian be willing to come teach their kids about something, the answer would have been yes, for sure. But we don't ask because normal is junk food. Normal is pizza. And this is the certificate of completion that, congratulations, allows you to get a free Pizza Nova. This was handed, this is ironic too, so the former VP of communications or public something with Coca-Cola, I used to upset him quite a lot. And he no longer works with Coca-Cola, and he's, I suppose, changed some of his mind about things, and he was shocked and appalled when his son came home as the outstanding patroller of the month for his school with the free hamburger, small fries, and drink at McDonald's. McDonald's and other fast food organizations are also getting involved in literacy. The McDonald's Reading Challenge, where you can get free treats for reading. And this idea of treating kids for the smallest of efforts is problematic too, especially given the rewards tend to be food. Here's the Read Your Heart Out program. This is personal pan pizza at Pizza Hut that teachers give students if they read enough books. This is the Boston Pizza Partners in Reading program, a similar one where teachers check off how many books people have read, and then you get a free Boston pizza. This is from California, where the Cover to Cover Club in the local public libraries, if you read 5 books, you can get a free hamburger, a cheeseburger at In-N-Out Burger, which is a fast food burger place. You know, my kids love reading because they love reading. I'm sure yours do too. I mean, kids don't need to be rewarded to read. Like, Reading is a reward. This idea that we need to keep rewarding. This is from your neck of the woods. This didn't happen, by the way, but Slush Puppy Plus was being advertised as a healthy thing that was going to come into the George Street Middle School cafeteria. Slush Puppy Plus is juice. It's just a slush puppy, but it's made of juice instead of, a sugar that was added by not nature. This didn't happen, but this satisfies the Alliance for a Healthier Generation school beverage guidelines, probably because the Alliance for a Healthy Generation is an industry organization. Then you see these really weird things. This happened just a few weeks ago in Toronto. Toronto hosted the Cheetos Museum at the Ontario Science Center. And actually, food processing is an interesting thing. Like, you could make a case that this would be valuable, right? The science of ultra-processed foods, the history of ultra-processed foods. There's a lot that you actually could teach kids about food like Cheetos. But what the event actually involved was hunting for Cheetos that looked like famous people or animals. And it involved a swing that you could swing on and a photo op with Chester the cheetah. And again, hosted by the Ontario Science Centre. This is around here as well. This was school teaching physical literacy with pizza boxes from Pizza Delight. And, I appreciate that there was a parent who owns a franchise and who donated pizza boxes, but could we not teach food literacy with something other than pizza boxes? But we don't question this because it's normal. What's wrong with it? Here we've got a coupon for a small soft serve ice cream cone. This is if you attended a mall program on internet safety. Here's an Ontario program where kids who are caught doing a good deed by the police are given a coupon for Max Milk Frosty. The Max Milk Frosty had something like 16 teaspoons of sugar and 400 change calories. But again, the issue here is the police giving out warmth and goodwill to Max Milk to kids and tying that emotion together. These are kids who are wearing their helmets on bikes or, helping somebody across the street. And I suppose it's good to suggest that that's a good thing to do, but are there better rewards? And I'm going to come back to that. This is honestly one of my favorite slides. During the War of 1812, young kids entered Fort York full of courage, strength, and pride. This weekend they'll leave full of cookies, cake, and candy. This is Fort York. Like, why do we need to do this? But we do this because, again, it's normal. Boo at the zoo. So the zoo in Colorado decided that one day of Halloween was not enough, and that instead we needed multiple days of Halloween, so 6 days of Halloween with 9,000 pounds of candy to be handed out at trick-or-treat tables throughout the zoo. Now, my kids like the zoo all by itself. Like, we don't need to entice them with candy for the zoo. But the best part is that this is sponsored by the Children's Hospital Colorado and Colorado Springs Pediatric Dentistry. Again, you've got to question, how did we get to a place where Colorado Springs Pediatric Dentistry wanted to be involved in handing out 9,000 pounds of candy? And, cynically you might say, it's because it's good for business, but I really don't think that that's what the intention was. This was a city camp in Ontario. These were the lunch options that a parent sent me. These are the camp-provided lunch options. So if you want your kid to have something healthy, you've got to send them with a brown bag, which in turn might lead your kid to feel singled out or shortchanged. But how can we have a situation where a city-run camp on Friday decides that lunch are fries, freezies, and juice? But yet here we are. And these strange things that occur in schools have been spreading. So this is the kindergarten class that's met a math goal where they then invited the students to decide what award they wanted. Kindergartners decided they wanted an unhealthy snack. Perhaps you don't need to ask kindergartners what they want, or offer the unhealthy snack. Nowadays, if you finish 100 days of school, you have a party to celebrate you finished 100 days of school, where, for the most part, the parties involve junk food. Here, if you go to the Guelph Public Library and tell them what exam you're studying for, you are handed junk food. Because apparently studying for studying's sake, a very important skill for a child to learn, isn't sufficient without a reward. And this one from a Catholic school, red is for the blood he gave. I don't think we need to be teaching religion with jelly beans. And so we have a very unlevel playing field here. And this is why treatment is not sufficient. You know, treatment, and my office runs a Ministry of Health funded program for parents of children with obesity. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't be offering treatment. I'm just saying that it is not going to level this playing field, and that it is not just one. It's constant. You know, and parents can't just say no. I'm a parent who cares about this stuff. You can't just say no. You know, this is my battle. This isn't my kids' battle. I don't think it's fair to make my kids feel like outcasts. I question whether or not it'll have a negative effect on their relationship with food, to try to teach them that they have to say no and avoid stuff, so we don't do that. We do teach our kids about healthy eating and moderation and so forth, but I don't want them shouldering this burden. And so we have a flood with our kids, and we're watching our school buses go to school every day in the water like this, and we're not doing anything about it. And so, yes, and Sarah's going to talk about this, and so will Manny, we do need systemic change from on high. But I believe that there's something we can do as community members too. When you've got a flood and you're building a levee, we need the institutional support, but we also need to fill our own sandbags. And they're filling. So there are victories out there. So Middlesex County launched their own campaign to try to change the culture on sport fields. And this year they announced that Strathroy United had decided to only allow water and fruit on their sports fields on a daily basis. This is Calgary's positive ticket campaign. Remember, I showed you the Frosty coupons. In Calgary, if you get caught doing something good, you get free admission to the arena for a skate or a swim. We've got programs where, you know, kids can fundraise by selling vegetables or seeds or seedlings. I mean, there is no shortage of things that can be done. And so we've also got a camp in the Toronto region that has now decided to stop selling, at the request of parents, pop in their tuck shops. This is what we're going to see. I mean, we will see systemic change eventually. And I think that we are going in the right direction. But what it's going to take are all the people in this room starting to make more noise about it. Noise doesn't need to be angry, by the way. Having these discussions is important. Pointing out, you know, the issues are important. And we can do that. You know, sometimes you will feel like this picture of me, where, you know, I'm yelling into the wrong end of the megaphone. But, you know, I think that it starts with dialogue. And I used to be much angrier about all of this stuff. And it's not that I'm not disappointed or upset now. It's just that I recognize that, you know, our lifespans are short. And I think we see everything through that lens. And I think we need to take a step back from that. You know, we're going in the right direction. We really are. Maybe it'll take 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 generations, but in the grand scheme of things, that's nothing. But what it needs to start with is noise and discussion. And I am sure that everybody in this room can think of one place where they could have a chat about, this is the problem, we think you're an awesome organization, this doesn't fit with how awesome you are, here are some alternatives, and here's how I can help. That is the recipe for change. It's going to be guerrilla nutrition from house to house, from school to school, from sport field to sport field. And maybe then we'll start seeing some leverage for systemic change. Thank you very much.